Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square, and it is Tuesday morning, so that means that I am joined by Edwin Eisendrath, who hosts It's the Democracy Stupid right here on Lincoln Square on Friday afternoons. That is also the name of his Substack and his show on Heartland Signal, which airs over the weekends on Chicago radio. Edwin, thank you for being here.
Good morning, Susan.
Good morning. So I thought we would start out by talking about one of Trump's cabinet members who usually kind of flies below the radar. That would be his transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, whose claim to fame was being on The Real World, I believe was the reality show. Yeah, he was a member of Congress in Wisconsin. For several years. His wife is a TV personality on Fox News. But as we've been experiencing some pretty significant problems with transportation, whether it's, safety, we had our first air crash in over a decade on his watch. Over spring break, people are waiting in line for TSA for 4 hours or more in a lot of major airports because of the government shutdown that Republicans refused to end. But as all this has been going on, we found out this week that Sean Duffy and his family have spent like the last 7 months filming a reality TV series instead of this guy doing his job. Edwin, I know it's not a serious administration, but the job of running our transportation infrastructure is a serious one. So what are your thoughts on this?
Look, I love my time in government service, working and in the federal government. And the people who do the job, at least when I was there, they cared about it. They cared about their work. They did important work. And over at transit, my God, that is a big job. I mean, Americans drive millions of miles every year. We fly millions of miles. There's, a train infrastructure that is wanting, but it's still very, very important in America. There are important relations with every state because transit dollars have to be negotiated for all kinds of projects. It is a really important job, and Americans' lives can be made better if you want to do the job well. But if you want to take the paycheck and go cut a reality TV job because Donald Trump thinks the whole administration is just a reality TV show, then you may get points with Donald Trump. But at some point, reality bites. I mean, Donald Trump thinks that war is a reality show, and it turns out, not. And it's related to Sean Duffy because now we're talking about gas tax, right? Mm-hmm. And without the gas tax, he won't be able to maintain those roads.
Right.
Or fix the bridges or any of that stuff that is paid for by the gas tax. And where's Sean Duffy on any of this? Filming a reality show.
Right.
A reality show. And we're paying him to do it. It is, by the way, illegal. I mean, you pay a guy to do a job, they have to do the job and not have this extra income coming from who knows what. I mean, it's and by the way, wait till we find out who's paying for it. It's
we do know some of the show's sponsors, biggies that the department
regulated by his department, right. Of
like
course.
Boeing, Toyota, Shell, Royal Caribbean, United Airlines. So
right. You just have to prove, Susan, that you're a crooked grifter to stay, and you don't give a damn about taxpayers to stay in this administration. That is like the baseline of thug that goes into this administration.
Yeah,
God, they're terrible people.
They are. And so now, thanks to their generous sponsorship, we'll be treated to the Duffy family's Great American Road Trip. And this is part of the administration's ongoing propaganda about the United States' 250th anniversary.
Oh, so Duffy is going to drive across the country, won't see anybody black, won't see an immigrant, right? That's who they are. Oh my God, they're terrible. They're just the worst.
It's insanity. And, so meanwhile, we've got this guy gets to travel in luxury with his family, our transportation secretary. Well, gas is averaging $4.55 a gallon. We have travel. It's just an expensive nightmare for the rest of us. But, he gets a 7-month vacation instead of doing his real job.
Right. I mean, right? And the folks he's supposed to regulate are paying for it. So,
Right.
crooked grifting it's just, I bet if we look hard enough, there isn't a department where you won't see somebody doing this because, as I say, this is the character of this administration, top to bottom. It's just
Yeah.
thoroughly repulsive.
Yeah. I mean, we saw this with Kristi Noem, who, basically her entire tenure as Homeland Security Secretary was cosplaying in different costumes, and her no bid contract for that, $250,000 ad that she shot on horseback. Let's see, we've got Kash Patel. He has his own line of bourbon with his name on it that he's handing out as FBI director.
He's handing it out or drinking it. I can't tell.
Both, because we've seen him drinking on the job with the men's U.S. hockey team. And of course, all of the detailed reporting that the Atlantic has come out with about how he is drunk on the job constantly and ultra paranoid. I mean, it really is the worst of reality television in this administration. And why would we expect any less? I mean, our president, the only reason why the guy is probably president is because he was able to remake his image on TV as a master negotiator and businessman on The Apprentice, which didn't match up with reality at all. This is a guy who bankrupted casinos. So why wouldn't he, be hiring the worst of the worst from reality TV, or people who consider that to be the pinnacle of fame in this country?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't the first time. The first time he hired, there were still Republicans who cared about the country, who were talented and were hired, and they protected us from the worst of Donald Trump. This time, he's not interested in that. This is the full Trump show. Everybody in the administration is repulsive on a good day, a grifter, and hurting us, all of us Americans. I think that's their job. Lining their pockets and their friends' pockets. And the worst of it is that everyone in the Republican Party's gone along with it.
Yeah.
Right? And the ones who didn't have been swept away. So we have to acknowledge, and we'll get at this later when we talk about other topics, but this isn't a normal two-party time anymore.
No, it's not. And so we've talked a lot, Edwin, about the massive corruption of Trump himself, his family, his administration. It's another week, so it's another scandal, this time with that ridiculous repainting of the reflecting pool in the National Mall, where Trump, he awarded it to a no-bid contract. And who out there was saying, you know what we really need? We need a bright blue pool by the Lincoln Memorial. That's our biggest priority, as nobody can afford the price of gas and groceries.
I mean, the pool, the plowing under the rose garden, destroying the East Wing for his ballroom. These are the, building his arch. These are the things that preoccupy him.
Putting his face on money. I think we've got that.
Putting his face on every building and the money in our passports. I mean, he's insane. I don't know what to say, but this is not. I'm speechless because the damage that's happening to the country every day. It's not a joke. It's not owning the libs. I mean, we hate it. Whoever we are, we hate what he's doing. But that's not really a reason to destroy the country like that. I mean, every piece of our nation is hurting, from healthcare to education to inflation to, record number of farm bankruptcies.
Right.
He's not hurting blue America. We're resilient in some ways. Rural America is getting massacred by these guys, and they just don't care. They just do not care. As long as they can line their pockets and make the Capitol over to look like Donnie Disneyland or whatever it is he's doing, and all of it illegal, and doesn't, but the rule of law has not held in this administration. It's very, very dangerous time.
Yeah. But the insanity, the mass corruption of this administration, there is no way that Trump could get away with this if he wasn't completely enabled by the Republican Party.
Yeah. I mean, Susan, look, they tried to indict the Fed chair because they didn't like him. So they said, oh, you have cost overruns on a project. Well, it turns out that he was talking that the cost overrun was they gave him a budget for one building, and Donald Trump looked at the cost of 3 buildings and said, oh, you've overrun the cost. So that's actually not accurate. And it was pointed out to him as not accurate, but nonetheless, he sent his lawyers, not the Justice Department, to go after him and try and indict him. He got thrown out, of course.
Right.
But talk about overruns. He then issues an illegal no-bid contract for this reflecting pool for, I think, 1.3 million, and it's now 13 million or something, 12 million, right, of overruns in a no-bid contract given to a friend of his for a job we didn't need.
Right.
And will an inspector general look at it? Will the Justice Department look at it? Will Congress look at it? No, no, no. Right. And the rest of us are left sipping our overexpensive coffee, wondering, like,
things to tear up. Yeah. So, this is an extraordinarily corrupt administration that's been thoroughly enabled by the Republican Congress, but also the highly partisan conservative Supreme Court. And they're not done doing damage over the Calais gerrymandering decision. They have, issued some subsequent opinions where they are just greenlighting all of the southern states' complete attempts to throw out the rules in the middle of the game. I mean, votes were being cast in Louisiana. Elections were canceled. In Tennessee, you had people running for office. Now their districts don't exist anymore. They also in Tennessee passed, as part of their gerrymandering bill, they made it so that they can change polling locations and not inform the public. So you can show up to vote on election day and you're in the wrong place, and that's another great way for your vote not to count. We saw what they're doing down in Alabama. All of this is being green-lighted by the Supreme Court that has just turbocharged this Republican power grab for gerrymandering in a mad dash to make sure that Republicans maintain power in Congress so that there is no accountability for this administration. Edwin, what do we do?
Well, they're going to hear Virginia's case too, and they're going to say no. So,
right. Well, the Virginia Supreme Court already,
yep. So it's gone
on that one.
So they've gone to the U.S. Supreme Court,
right, which
will not help them. Right.
No.
So
because there are completely different rules for blue states and for red states when it comes to redistricting.
And the timing of when you can make a decision
near
an election, right? So John Roberts is crying in his tea that the country thinks he's a politician in robes. I think he's a politician in robes, and I can't tell whether he's got white ones under the black ones, right? I mean, I just think it's so appalling what he's done.
I mean, this is a guy who cut his teeth on Bush v. Gore in 2000, which handed the presidency to George W. Bush, and in my opinion, was a really key decision in getting us to the point where our democracy is completely under assault. Because the Supreme Court made the decision in that presidential election. Individual voters did not. And he was working for the Bush campaign on that case, as was Brett Kavanaugh. And so this guy is a politician through and through. He is a Republican through and through, and we are all paying the price right now.
Well, so look, the courts, for a long time, the left in America thought the courts were our ally and they would help us, right?
Yeah. We thought that the rules would apply. We thought that the rule of law would hold.
Right. Silly us. So now we last year we started to learn an old lesson about organizing, an old lesson about showing up. And, early on, you had the Women's Day March 4 years ago. Lots of people showed up. You had No Kings. Lots of people showed up. These rallies tended to be older and whiter. With the complete destruction of the Voting Rights Act, we now have Black America saying, wait a minute, that was my grandmother who was marching for that. That was my Dad got beaten up for that. We laid down our lives for that. And now they're going to turn out along with those old white folks and all those women. And, they're counting on Latino votes in Texas, but my God, they're losing Latino votes like crazy because I guess, people don't like it when folks break down your door, grab your mother, and throw her in alligator Alcatraz, right?
Mhm.
So this administration's treated people so terribly, and people remember that. And the people they haven't treated at all, they've ignored. Well, they've raised their prices, they've closed their hospitals, they've shut the market so they can't sell their goods, or they've tariffed up the supply chain so they can't make the goods to begin with. I mean, I can't think of a success this administration's had. And then there's Iran, which Robert Kagan wrote this piece in the Atlantic this week. Robert's a good writer, about how America's set back by a generation, its place in the world. It can't recover. There is no path to victory given what he's done. The United States got its ass kicked by Iran because our president was unprepared, didn't think about the consequences, didn't plan strategically, confused the ability to bomb the crap out of people with actually winning something, because that's who he is. And America put him there. He won that election. Mm-hmm. But we are a country that learns. And all of his enablers,
do we? Because we reelected the guy. I mean, after what he did to this country during COVID, where in the end, over 1 million people ended up dying, hundreds of thousands as a result of his terrible leadership and policies. And we put him in the White House again. So
we don't learn fast.
Okay.
We don't learn fast. I mean, what was it Churchill said? It's not in the United States to always do the right thing after it's exhausted every other possibility.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a lot of time to spare because, as the Trump administration is making all of these decisions, they're having so many negative effects that will be very hard to undo no matter who is president next. I mean, we are making the climate crisis worse with his insane policies canceling funding for clean energy, right, and with his war in Iran that is driving up the prices, the price of gas for us all. What he has done with USAID, where already, I mean, there have been so many deaths around the world of poor children because we couldn't keep something running because Elon Musk decided, I don't really care about this program, so let's shut it down. And thanks for another tax cut that I certainly didn't need. Edwin, let's talk about the economy. I mean, we just had a report come out today that inflation has jumped to a 3-year high. I mean, a lot of the people who voted for Trump, it was based on the economy. It was based on the after effects of inflation after COVID. People wanted something different. But the consumer price index is up to 3.8% in April. I mean, we're seeing similar numbers. We're seeing gas head towards the level that it was that really sunk Joe Biden. So we know that people aren't getting anything out of this administration now, but how are we going to rebuild this massive damage to international relations, the world economy, are standing with trying to help the poorest of the poor? How do we take this on?
Well, that's a powerful question that's going to take us years to address. Fortunately, when the United States dropped the torch of freedom, something we held proudly for 100 years in this world, we dropped it. We dumped it in a blue painted reflecting pond and tried to put it out. But others took it up, because human freedom doesn't just die, even if the United States isn't interested. So Europe is playing a role that hasn't played in a long time. Ukraine is a hero in the world for what it's done for human freedom and human dignity in the fight for the things that we used to want to lead on, right? So in some sense, the focus is going to be elsewhere. That's America's loss. And we do not get that back. We do not rebuild the trust that Donald Trump has squandered in 4 years. It may take us 20 years and leadership through some, whatever the next tragedy is, provided we're able to lead, right? But that's gone. Whether or not we lose the world's confidence in the dollar, that's also possible. That hasn't happened yet, but Donald Trump could make that happen too. We have this really interesting thing this week. Trump is going to China, where the famously unprepared, unstrategic president is going into a country that's prepared to the teeth for this conversation.
Well, that's why he's bringing his billionaire friends to handle everything.
The rest of the world should be very worried about this summit. Donald Trump wants a few things, right? He wants a path where he doesn't look like the loser he is in Iran. Could you please force Iran to make peace with us? Please, please, please. He's going to ask the Chinese, right? And what's he going to do for that? He's already delayed weapons sales to Taiwan. So, he for all who knows what he's going to do, but whatever it is, he's proven in 12 meetings with Putin that he's completely inept and unable to deal with things on the world stage.
Well, he acts like a schoolgirl when he's dealing with any kind of, bloodthirsty dictator like Putin or Xi. So I think we can expect more of the same there. He's already ceded major economic ground to China on clean energy, on battery development. I know you had a fascinating conversation with journalist David Roberts last week about that. And that's another problem that Trump has created that is not going to be easy to undo. The technology is really slipping away from America, whether it's green energy or pharmaceuticals or AI. And all you have to do is look at the White House for its policies and the lack of leadership there.
The leadership is damaging in every possible front. Whatever you think of AI, it's got a role in our future.
Right.
And one of the leading companies is Anthropic. America made the decision, look, we're going to let the private sector take the lead in developing these technologies.
Right, and not have any guardrails.
The government's going to do it.
Right.
And theirs is open source, so that's interesting. Ours is private, owned by people, because we have this notion that if they can make a huge profit on it, they're going to do better. Okay, right. Leave that aside for the moment. But Anthropic is one of the biggest players in this. So Pete Hegseth says, we need to put them out of business. We need to put them out of business. Yeah. Because they said, I can't use their AI to automate the murder of people. Okay. So in every possible way, this administration is bad for the economy, bad for our future. Look at what they've done to scientific research. Look what they've done to healthcare. More people have lost their insurance since he's been president than in a long.
And that's been by design. The Republican Congress refused to extend the Obamacare subsidies, which are wildly popular with Republicans and Democrats alike.
So what they do, Susan? They're going to blame inflation on blue states. They're going to say food prices are up because there's a program called SNAP. Right. Okay. So we pay farmers a little bit to make some more food, and we give it. We help subsidize the purchasing of people who are hungry in America. Mm-hmm. The Republicans think that they can blame the hungry people in America for the rise in food.
Don't forget immigrants. They're really to blame too.
And they're going to blame them. And they're going to blame blue states. They're going to blame everyone. I watched some of those Sunday shows. I wish I hadn't. Because, the Republican rhetoric is like, oh, everything is great. And the Democrats are all these radicals. America's never going to support these radicals. They're just look at they don't have America's interests at heart. They want to tear us up. I've never heard such confession in the guise of an accusation before.
Yeah. I want to go back to the discussion that we were having about gerrymandering, because I know that something that you've struggled with and I have too is a lot of the discussion that is going on right now is the horse race. What's this going to mean for the 2026 midterms? How many more seats can Republicans pick up? And what kind of disadvantage are Democrats in? And that's a fair discussion. And, that's certainly a reality. But this goes so much deeper than that, Edwin. This really cuts at the heart of our multiracial democracy. This cuts to the heart of the Voting Rights Act, which obviously has been rendered all but useless by the Supreme Court, which was only passed in 1965. This really takes us backwards into the 19th century in terms of where people's rights are in the South when all is said and done. When you are cutting out any kind of representation for a party, for Black Americans, that is exactly what you are trying to do. And that is a really sobering thing for us to contend with.
So I have two thoughts about that. One is to say to people, this is not a Democratic and Republican moment. If you think Chuck Schumer, God bless him, is going to save American democracy, you've lost American democracy. And I don't blame Chuck for that. This is not the Democrats' job. They're a political party. The democracy belongs to us. It belongs to us. If you want to save it, you have to save it. The courts have proven they're in bed with guys who want to turn the clock back, who want people not to be allowed to vote. Not to be allowed to vote. What is that? That's not the democracy we have fought and died for 250 years. They want to do this on the basis of race. And they say, oh, no, we don't think there should be anything on the basis of race. But what they don't say is, we're going to go have a Justice Department that says white people are being discriminated against on the basis of race. So they don't. This is all a lie on their part. So one, this is when you hear people on news shows do the horse race. Well, Democrats might get 3 seats, Republicans are going to get 5 seats, whatever that is. What they're really saying is democracy is losing seats. Where they're saying, no one can forget that this midterm race to gerrymander the country was launched by Donald Trump and his friend Greg Abbott. And the rest of what Democrats are doing is just defense, and they know it. And in every case where they've done it, they've gone to the voters in their state and explained it, which Republicans never did, ever, because it's not about the democracy for them. It is about retaining power, just like the CCP in China.
Yeah.
It's a party that will do anything to retain power and not use that power for our good. All right. So that's one. That's one really important thing you just have to remember about this. It's not a horse race. This is about democracy, and it's not about what the Democrats will do. It's about what you will do, what each of us will do to save that democracy. And then, Susan, if I were the next president, here's a tempting thought. I might be tempted to say, on day one, we are going to enforce the Voting Rights Act, period. That decision was egregiously decided. It was decided by a Supreme Court illegitimately, feathering its own nest with powers it does not have to rewrite the laws and rewrite the Constitution. I'm sorry, we are going to enforce that law. Anybody who's elected from a district that is illegal will not be seated in Congress. And anybody who demands to keep these lines will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, period. That's a constitutional crisis, a terrible constitutional crisis when the executive branch says, we don't care what the Supreme Court says, but the Supreme Court plunged the country into a constitutional crisis. They did it by taking more powers than they have time and time and time again. And you're right, it began with the lust for power after they could make a presidential election, Bush v. Gore. It got furthered when, in the Heller case, they could just take the first 13 words off the Second Amendment and nobody
rewrite it.
Right, rewrite it. So, okay.
And now they've rewritten the 15th Amendment.
And the 14th in the Anderson case, right? So they have become too powerful, the Supreme Court. They've taken powers they do not have. The same thing they complain about in the executive and legislative. Well, the executive branch, not the legislative branch, has given away its power.
Yeah.
But they gave it away because the Supreme Court told them they could be bought.
Yep.
right. So this court is a danger to our freedom. And the next president next Congress has to have real reform. And it might just take the form of, sorry, guys, we don't care what you say anymore.
Yeah.
Decide to do your job.
So yesterday I had a really fascinating conversation with Tennessee Representative Gloria Johnson, who's part of the Tennessee Three. And she has been fighting against gerrymandering in her state tooth and nail, along with other Democrats there. She believes very passionately that democracy can be saved, and it will be saved through the South. She says not the South will rise again, but the South will rise anew. And it was a really inspiring conversation. But then, after I was done with that conversation, I had to catch up on the news, and I saw the Democrats in Virginia were deciding not to go with the nuclear option to take on their Supreme Court after the Supreme Court threw out millions of votes. There was an election and they overturned it by a judicial decision, which is not
4-3 partisan vote on this.
Right, exactly. But Democrats decided not to go with the nuclear option then. And Edwin, I'm just wondering that, when Democrats are still clinging on to the way things used to be and to norms, and they're not willing to fight fire with fire and to think outside the box and to use some of the tactics that Republicans so gleefully use, aren't we sending the message to people that really the bad guys just want this more?
Well, like I said, I'm at the point where I'm willing to use willing to say we are in the constitutional crisis we're in, and tell the courts to go stuff it until they decide to do their job in a legitimate way. I would have done more in Virginia, but I'm not in Virginia. I don't know what they were dealing with really, because local decisions are hard to second guess. But the country wants to see fighters trying to save our democracy. They want to see it from people in office and out of office. And I have no patience for half measures when somebody has put a knife to the throat of Lady Liberty. And this is what Republicans are trying to do. Despite their gerrymandering, they may not be able to preserve their congressional majorities. And then we will not forget. We will not forget this. The second part of that you mentioned earlier, which is, okay, it's not just about drawing lines, but we can move polling places and not tell you, is, ancient voter suppression. This is really, we're really in a bad place when it comes to democracy. So we have to turn out in the biggest of possible numbers. We do. I mean, they will cheat they've demonstrated that they've gone over every line that's been said about cheating. And there's no indication that they're going to stop between now and the election. They're going to keep trying. And Donald Trump, he's going to keep trying in every way he can. Because one thing he is tough. He's a tough guy. And he's not going to, we can back him down, but it takes millions of us to show up. We've backed him down from building those prison camps all over America, thank God. And they're still trying, but we've slowed it down a lot. And we can slow down he's lost 30 cases when he's demanded states give him access to the control local elections. He's not winning those.
Yep, and 30 seats have flipped from red to blue since Donald Trump was elected president. So his track record isn't good, but democracy has to be able to stand up to a bully like this. We have to be every inch as tough as he is, and more so. Yes,
and we have to. When we say he, it isn't just Donald Trump, but this complicit Congress that has turned a blind eye to the most corrupt administration in American history, the most dangerous administration in American history, and finally the most incompetent, drunk, disorderly, on the road for 7 months, you know, like spending
Congress
taxpayer money
barely
to ride a
passes,
horse off into the wilderness.
right?
Please.
And a Congress that barely passes any bills. I mean, this is the do nothing Congress to beat all do nothing Congresses.
I wish they'd pass no bills, but the big, beautiful bill is so damaging all by itself.
Oh, it completely is. No, you would not want them passing legislation, but they're too lazy to even do it.
They're hiding. They're hiding. They won't go to town meetings. They won't meet with Americans, but they don't need to because they've drawn the maps to get elected. We
Right.
have fewer competitive elections than we've ever had in the Congress.
Right. The
Yeah.
only way that they can win is if they change the rules of the game midway through and where they cheat when they can. And that is not a great sign for this political party, but I mean, they're just kind of like a drunk at a casino. They're all in, and this is the road they're going to go on. They're committed to it, no matter how wrong some of them know it is. But this is really go time for us because the midterm elections are one of our best chances to try and preserve our democracy.
I asked, I was with some very serious democracy advocates, litigators who are in this business of litigating on voting rights around the country and campaign finance around the country. And they were bullish at the moment on what they're doing in the courts. But I asked them, what happens if Republicans hold power through this election?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we're not sure we can continue to win in courts if they appoint more judges, you know, and then it all goes away.
Right. And so I think, before we go today, I think it's important for us to talk to our audience. And I know there are probably very few voting Republicans in our audience. So you're Democrats, you're independents, you love our democracy. That's why you are tuning into pro-democracy media. You are probably very invested in several primaries if your state has not had its primaries yet. And it is a good, healthy process for democracy. However, the most important thing is, even if your favorite candidate does not win for your Senate seat, your congressional seat, there really is no Democrat out there who's going to be worse than any Republican that they are running against. Every seat counts for the House, for the Senate, for your state legislature, for your township board. And, really fight it out in the primary. Hopefully the best candidate wins. But probably the worst Democrat is still going to vote so much better than any of these MAGA Republicans. And it really does come down to our democracy.
Yes, 100%. And look, and it isn't just that one candidate will vote better than the others. The majorities have on their own determined the agenda. Majorities determine what laws you get to vote on. So even if your candidate's a skunk, you want to take the majority away from these other guys because they're using it to destroy not just our democracy, but American society. I mean, they're turning people against each other. What they are doing to the people who are going paycheck to paycheck, and lower income Americans and Americans who don't look like you and me. It is appalling and cruel and by the way, and unsustainable for everyone. Real danger. And what they're doing in the world has damaged America for the rest of my life. I hope not for all of my children's lives and grandchildren, but I don't have grandchildren yet. So maybe they'll be okay. But we have a huge rebuild to do when we get these terrible people out of office.
Absolutely.
By the way, I'm confident we can do it, Susan. Again, rebuilding confidence in the rest of the world is going to take a while, but it is a remarkably resilient country with remarkable, capacity to move forward. We do have that capacity. This is a terrible detour.
I mean, in our 250 years, we have reinvented this country over and over again. I know for a long time, I felt very optimistic that we were building on progress. This is a huge reversal, but we've faced a lot of challenges in this country. We are a country that was built on slavery. We outlawed it. We are a country that for a century after we outlawed slavery, still did not have true democracy in the South. And we were able to push past that. The people in power are trying to undo all of that progress. They're doing it at a very rapid and scary rate, but the fight isn't over. And this is a fight we all have to be part of.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about this is our whole history. Are we having a 250th birthday party here? Are we going to have some counter programming to the MMA going on in the White House and the mayor of the country? Yeah, I think we should have some
we need to
real patriotic
true history of the country, not whatever Donald Trump is pushing, his weird Christian nationalist homoerotic MMA fight. So yes, more stay tuned. We will definitely.
I look forward to it.
Do a much better celebration, because it should be a celebration. 250 years, you know, for the oldest democracy. I mean, that's not bad. We have done a lot of good in this country, and it's also a good opportunity for us to talk about how we can do better.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, Edwin.
Thank you, Susan.